Hello, it's the A to Z podcast. Zach Jackson, Andre Knott, at Akron Jackson, at Dre Knott on most of your favorite social media platforms, at A2Zpodcast.com, at Facebook.com/A to Z podcast. Shouts as always to Scene, to the Honeymoon Grill, to American Fireworks, always open at AmericanFireworks.com for supporting us. Shouts to you guys for supporting us, for helping make this thing grow. If you're new here, welcome. We do offer a little warning/disclaimer. We get excited. We say four-letter words. We venture into mature/immature subjects. So if that's not for you, if there are kids around, or if you're in a work environment, put on earbuds or come back to A to Z at another time. We don't want anybody ever to get in trouble for listening to A to Z, do we, Andre?
No, we don't. Happy holidays. And if you would get in trouble for it, you should probably change some of the things in your life. Because this is how adults talk. Especially in Northeast Ohio, when nothing makes sense and nothing adds up half the time.
So we are in the afternoon of December 30th as we record this. For a lot of people want this year to be over. Whether you really want it to be or not, it is in a day. It's a strange sports year. It's a strange year in general. Yeah. So...
No, that's a good way of putting it. Think about it. As bad or as strange or as weird as this year is, we're never going to forget it.
No.
You know, it's very strange because, I don't know, I've always had, I don't want to say mental coaches, but I've always, and I guess I go through this, my wife and I have had these discussions for, 20 years on and off, of and I've had this with other people, maybe you, but why do we remember, good things that happen? I always used to complain to my wife. It was you never are happy about the good things in life as much as you are the bad. If I screw up, you remember that for 10 days.
Yeah.
If I do something really good, that's gone in 10 minutes. And for whatever reason, that's kind of what 2020 is going to be like. No matter what else happens in the rest of your lives, you're going to always go back to, remember back in March of 2020?
Yeah.
We're all going to have a remember, and we'll remember that. Nobody remembers anything that happened in 2015. Or 2014. I mean, you might remember this or that, but you don't remember anything of, we remember Browns games and we remember stupid things like where guys were drafted from. But it's amazing. Most of us, no matter how good, how bad our memories are, we will remember about everything about the year 2020.
Yeah, not just because we're old, right? But, I give you an incident in 2012, 2013 run together, right?
Yeah.
2017, 2000, and I'm just throwing out numbers, right?
Right.
Going way back, especially because we're both kind of savants of useless knowledge, me more than you, but you certainly also. You could pick out a random year, a certain event, right?
Right.
But, this one here, and I'll tell you what, now that we've made it through, it did go fast because I can remember on the Wednesday night, the day before all the shutdown happened, I was assigned to cover a high school basketball game. And we don't cover high school sports on The Athletic, but we thought we were headed to an unprecedented event, right? And they had basically said each school is only allowed a certain amount of people, and, we're going to lay out sanitizer, and we're going to do this. And so I went to the Canton Fieldhouse. I saw how it all was. This was before masks and everything, right? And
right.
Then I drove all the way out to Atwater, to where Waterloo was one of the teams, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's out by Sarshone, if you guys remember when they were on board with us. Miss you, Alex. Anyway, because there were this small town and, hadn't been to the regionals in however many, a generation plus, right? So they were gathered in the cafeteria, the people that had followed the team all year, because only, say, 120 people could go to the game or whatever. So I was just kind of hanging out in case, this story break. Well, they play the game, they win the game. As I'm driving back, because it's way out there. It's way out, Portage County. Yeah. Almost to where you get to the point where, Stark and Mahoning kind of run together. And I remember where I was there because I had to stop for gas on the way back, hearing on the radio, Rudy Gobert has tested positive. The NBA has shut down, right?
Yeah.
And again, we have to say we're not making light of anything. We know people that have been lost to this. We talk sports and we measure things in sports, right?
Right.
And it's a shame that all these months later, it's not under control, that it wasn't months ago, that we're still losing people, that we're still fighting these battles, sure. Yeah. But for March Madness not to go on in my life, I mean, holy hell, right?
Yeah.
And now here we are, and I really didn't even mean to go down this to start the podcast, to go down this road. I meant to say here we are in this year where the Browns were magic for 14 weeks and lost to the freaking Jets last week, but still could be winning in, right? So here we are. As we record this, the Browns can't get in the facility for practice because of COVID.
Right. No, yeah, this conversation plays into where we're at. This is the way to do it. It's a year-end review. Usually in a year-end review, I was telling my wife the other night, because we're like trying to figure out what we're going to do for New Year's, and we usually have our core group, over. And you've been invited, but you always have your things that you do. We have our core group over. We've been together with them. I don't know. Hell, I mean, my buddy Nick, who was my college roommate, his wife works for my wife. We still, 20 years. We know each other 25. I'm 42. We've known each other since we were 18. So we've all hung out. Rob, I've been friends with Rob since I was 12. So they're trying to come up with what were we going to do? And usually everybody comes to my house. And we bring, and I buy 100 bottles of Andre champagne because it's terrible, and I make everybody bring in the year. We've had that conversation. And finally, the other day, Jen was like, I guess I got to put a Zoom out and make everybody Zoom. And everybody's like, yeah, we're Zooming. And I'm just like, I can't believe that's what we're doing. Usually I annoy everybody by playing the music of the year and make them drink champagne. Now all of a sudden we're just going to be on Zoom in our pajamas, waving and talking to each other. But, I kind of like the idea of going back to where we were to where we're at, because I did think about that at 1 o'clock in the kickoff one Sunday of how the hell have we gotten this far through this crazy, obnoxious year, and in total Browns allure, we're now dealing with one of the silliest situations. I don't even have the right word to say. I don't want to say silly, but we're dealing with what we're dealing with. And as you said, as we're doing this podcast, they can't even practice right now yet. But I'll go back to that same date that you went back to in March. I remember I flew back here after I've been in Vegas. We did a game in Vegas. I went back to Arizona for a day, hung out with my nephew, took care of my nephew. It was like, all right, I got to go get, I'm going to go get your sister. I'm going to go get your mother. I'm going to go get my mom. I'm going to go get my wife. I'm going to go get my kids. I'm going to come back to Arizona. And I'll never forget. And how about Rudy Gobert's year? He gets COVID and shuts the world down. And by the end of the year, he signs a $200 million contract.
And you could also say that he saved lives by getting it when he did.
True. But I know a lot of people don't want to kick his ass because he was playing around with microphones and being silly about it the day before it came out. But
and you were on the podcast saying, wash your hands, wash your ass, and we'll be fine.
I'm still telling my kids that. Wash your hands. All right. It's true. Wash your hands and ass. That's still something that's important, people. But I'll never forget, we had people at my house in Arizona, and I not to make light of anything, so I don't want anybody to make light of it. But of course, I was on the podcast saying, "Wash your hands, wash your ass." At the same time, I'm back in Arizona, and obviously the Indians as an organization, it's getting a little tight. It goes from, I remember they had the players in the clubhouse signing balls in the clubhouse, don't go up to fans, da 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 da, and the players are and I remember prominent players are like, dude, we're fine. We're not we'll sign a couple autographs. We don't have to do this. And I just remember as they kept trying to not scare us, but tell us, no, this could be, this could be frantic. This could be bad. And, this could shut things down. And as athletes, and you know this, and I think most people listening know this, most of these young guys have made all their money off of their bodies. And the last thing they're worried about is their body shutting down, Mm-hmm. And their body has gotten them to a pretty far place in life. And I remember talking to a couple guys, and it was kind of yeah, man, this will pass in a couple days, and we'll be, all we care about is getting our rotation ready for opening day. Lord, we didn't know that opening day was going to be 4 or 5 months away from that. And I'll never forget, I took my kids to a game. I actually didn't work the game. I sat in the front row, and AJ's throwing peanuts at Frankie, and they're laughing and talking, and pictures, and I tell you how pictures always pop up. And the other day, pictures popped up of us sitting there, and AJ was like, well, that was the last time, Dad, I was allowed to go out and be at games and have fun. And that fucking crushed me, man, that my 6-year-old son can look at a picture and he's like, that's the last time I was allowed to go out and like really have fun and mess with people and mess with Frankie and mess with the guys. And I'm like, yeah, man. But also that I chuckle because the next day
and now you'll never see Frankie again, kid.
And you can't wear that shirt that says Indians.
Sorry, I couldn't pass that.
That was good. No, we need this type of moment. We went to one of those those jump places where the kids can climb mountains and all that other crap inside in Arizona. And I'll never forget we went and we're like, the kids are like, and like kids are coughing and sneezing all over the place. And I mean, kids are being kids. And I remember like after 20 minutes, I looked at Jen and was like, is this the right place to have our kids right now? Because as we're reading reports of what's going on across the country and how basically we're going to get sent home, we're both looking at each other like, why are we at this jump zone right now with our kids? And they're having the time of their life. And like you just see kids walking by with snot hanging out of their nose. Kids are coughing left and right. And I remember thinking, holy shit, our country is about to change. And not knowing how much it was going to change and how much it did change. It's just eerie because I can remember dropping my bags off at spring training site, and the guy that drives the truck was like, Dre, we'll have these back from Cleveland in a week, and hell, we'll have baseball going in 3 weeks. And I was just like, all right, man. I haven't seen that dude since.
And I mean, the other thing you left out of that is we don't know when the next opening day is either.
Nope.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody needs a reset. So whether it's December 31st in a normal year or in this year, January 1st, your resolutions, I always break mine in 6 days, sometimes in 6 hours, right? Like we've talked about this before. This is one of the times, Dre, where I feel like we've been doing this forever because you need that, right? Whether things are going well or things are going poorly, like when you're a grown-up, which we kind of are, right? Like you have to take stock. You have to sit back and say, what's going too fast, what's going too slow, what's not going my way, what's ahead. And there's things you can't control and there's things unforeseen. I mean, a lesson from this year is what you have can be taken away from you so fast, right?
Yes.
A lesson from this year is that, of course, the Browns had a great year when people couldn't go to the game,
Right.
That's not a lesson. That's
Zach,
just...
I can remember that Thursday night game against the Bengals. The Indians had a game on the road, and he's breaking shit. This is good. This is how we going to end the year. We're going to break all our shit. Start new in 21. But I'll never forget going downtown and working the game and like driving out early to be like, oh, the crowd is going to be like, what are the bars going to be like? It's one of the saddest days of my life knowing a Browns game was getting ready to get played on Thursday Night Football, and there was nobody in downtown Cleveland. It was like the punch in the stomach of all punches in the stomach. It really was.
Yeah, just bizarre, really bizarre. Ohio State plays Clemson 2 nights from now in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
Nobody there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they worked out a deal the parents could go, but that's it. And it feels like it's so muted on the hype for that game, too.
Right. Because they're not in New Orleans. They're not.
I told
there.
you, a couple weeks ago, I stole this line. Like, college football this year is just a costume contest. It's just it's still going on because there's bills to pay, and the almighty dollar is the only reason that it is. And like Ohio State, Clemson has every chance to be an incredible football game. There are incredibly talented players, and even though I understand why Clemson is the favorite, and I just think Trevor Lawrence has separated himself from the other guys. Like, if the Buckeyes show up, they got some dudes, but I don't feel any hype for that game,
Right.
And I could be wrong
No.
because I'm certainly in my own bubble, right? But
right. The word bubble, Jesus, we all have a different connotation of that.
No,
it's not the same hype. But I think the same hype comes from, because I was watching something on ESPN last night, and you're right, my bubble is so different. We've talked about our watches or how much we watch. Even before this, you were like, I barely watch SportsCenter. We barely watch ESPN. But even now, it's to more of a different vibe because, well, what am I watching it for? There's no vibe because, Zach, we're used to waking up and in TV, whether it's FS1, whether it's ESPN, whether it's your local sports broadcast, everybody would be in New Orleans by now, right? Like, you would just have a vibe, even if you never left your mom's basement. you would have a vibe for what's going on in New Orleans. Somebody would have been arrested by now. A player would have got caught with a prostitute or something by now. Like, that's
you know what's hilarious? Right. These are things that have happened. But 5 years ago, I guess it'd be 6 because it was the 2014 season into early 2015. I covered the Sugar Bowl when Ohio State was there in the very first CFP semi ever. Right. On this day, like 2 days before the game, I was done with my work and told to meet so-and-so at 4 o'clock at such and such place. I go there, Dre. ESPN is set up. They're broadcasting from there, getting you hyped. And as I walk in, they're getting off the set, and Butch Davis was there. He was on that broadcast.
Yeah. Wow. Were his pants soiled?
By the probably. By the time we are done with this, my story will be posted. When the Browns played in Tennessee 4 weeks ago, I went early, and I went and hung out with Kelly Holcomb for a few hours. And, he basically said, "What do you want to talk to me for?" And I said, "Kelly, you're the last Browns quarterback to start a playoff game." And that was 18 years ago. And he basically said, "I know, but it's still unbelievable."
Right.
So I hope you'll all log on and read it. I thought he was very insightful on life and on football and on what happened. A couple things that stand out, and this kind of accidentally meshes with the theme here. He said that, he knew he was never going to be John Elway or Aaron Rodgers. Those are the two names he used. But he said he fought long and hard to prove he could play. And he said, no matter who you are, all you can ask for is a chance. And his chance was the Browns sneaking in the playoffs and Tim getting hurt, and he goes out and has a record day. And they fucking blow a 20-point lead.
Yep. Unbelievable. I'm mad for you. Can I take a time out? Can I be mad for you for a second?
Yeah.
Zach is I always make fun of Zach Jackson, Zach Meisel, a couple other of my friends that are writers. Because I don't know everything they're writing, but I usually get a pretty good, and I'm a nerd. Look, I'm their biggest fans. I'm a nerd. I read. I got 3 books for Christmas, and I acted like I was 12 and got a new play set, a card, because that's what I'm into. And I usually got a pretty good idea of things that they're working on or things that they may be writing that are coming up. And every once in a while, Zach's got to text me during our podcast, or Zach's got to nudge me and be like, "Hey, don't mention anything. Don't say anything about that. I want to, bring that back up later." So I've known for a while that he's been sitting on this story that's getting ready to drop. And I know little things about it. He's told me little bits and pieces. And I'm excited about this because Kelly Holcomb, it was just exciting. It was 18 years ago. I think we all remember. I can remember You brought this up last podcast. I can remember where I was at for the Dustin Fox Give Me a Championship nameplate on my license plate game. And I can remember where I was at for the Browns and the Steelers. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was with Jen and Rob for both games. And 18 years later, I'm still with them somehow, which is unbelievable. But I was mad for you when I saw others come up with Kelly Holcomb stories over the last 4 or 5 days. As a writer, that you've had that in your back pocket for 4 weeks now. What is it like when you see other people have his name pop up and you're like, "Fuck, I did that story already"?
It really didn't. No, in some cases, Dre, it would bother me, but if it was like anything explosive or whatever, we would have run it right away. And frankly, we were trying to save it for next week. But when they lost to the Jets, we're like, if they don't make the playoffs, and I think they'll win, but we can't be sitting on this, right? And so I went and, I spent like 2 hours at his house probably. One of the hardest parts of putting the story together was trimming it down so it's not 5,000 words, so you get through the whole thing. So one of the things that got left out, and he talks in detail about that game, about Dennis Northcutt's drop, and yes, they lost the game because they didn't convert, but he says he's a supporter of Dennis, and he was more mad at the defense and the defensive calls and all of that. So one of the things I asked him, and really, guys, in like 2 hours, 2+ hours, maybe 90 minutes of an actual interview, I only asked him about 10 questions. He just talked, and we just reminisced.
Awesome.
But I said, Kelly, I said, I can remember specific throws in that game that you made to where you would just watch it, and then all of a sudden the receiver would turn up and be right in his hands like you were in a zone. I said, were you ever is that the best you ever played? And he said, well, yes, given the circumstances. But then he pointed to that wild shootout 2 years later, which turned out to be Butch's last game in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, yeah.
And he says, I was locked in that day. He said, I had 5 touchdowns that day, and Dennis dropped a 6th. And I laughed my ass off.
I got to find Dennis Northcutt. That's great.
But, yeah, so he's got a kid that's going to be a senior in high school. He's his coach. You know, he basically says, I didn't make Peyton Manning money. I didn't make Tim Couch money. I made a lot of money, had a good life, involved in a few things, but, you know, nothing full-time. And I get to coach my kid. I'm a volunteer coach. And I get to be around my kid. And he just said, you know, he's had opportunities to go do other things, but he said high school football will always have a special place in his heart. And he just said he feels like that there's too many – I almost said the F word. Kelly doesn't cuss. I do. There's too many messed up families and too many kids who are getting a raw deal right now for him to not try to give back. And I thought that was really cool, you know? And like at the end, he said, look, football has been too good to me and God has been too good for me to get too mad about one game. And he said that Browns loss changed lives. And he's right, because the Browns could have won the next game too. The Browns could have really made a deep run and really kept guys together on the team, on the coaching staff in general, right? And a lot could have been different about the organization and about the NFL. Let's be honest, right? So he said lives changed that day, and he said that kind of cost him. But one of the other things, you know, the next year, week 3, I think, they play a real stinker out of the old Candlestick in San Francisco. They win, but Kelly gets hurt. And on a quarterback sneak that wasn't supposed to be a quarterback sneak. So basically, you know, he's a 180-pound guy lunging forward, and 2 defensive tackles just tee off on him. And Butch says it's a teeny tiny break. You know, we're not sure who's going to be our quarterback this week. It was a compound fracture of the fibula. Right. And that's not out. Like, that's been out there. That's not like some exclusive thing, to get back to your original question. But, yeah, so it was just really cool for me to do, because obviously I knew those guys, and he was rattling off names that he talks to. And I try to present it to Browns fans in this fashion. He's on a group message now with Andre Davis, the other Andre Davis, Quincy Morgan, Kevin Bentley, Phil Dawson.
Oh, my God.
Like 8 or 9 guys. And so the way I framed the start of the story was they haven't been to the playoffs since the flip phone era, right? And now all these guys that were the last to do it are texting during the games. So,
wow.
Yeah, so Kelly he's just a really good dude. That was his chance, you know, and he played great, and the Browns didn't win. And it is amazing. It's unspeakable. It's unbelievable that they haven't been back. It's sad, you know. But they're one win from getting back, and all they got to do is beat Mason Rudolph. So, I think you can look and say maybe the Steelers will tank because they would like to play the Browns again next week. They don't fully control that. You could look and say maybe the Steelers will show up and play their guys at least for a while because they need the work and because they don't want to do any favors to the Cleveland Browns, you know, even though the Ravens have become their primary rival. So we'll see. It's certainly interesting, but in this COVID stuff has added a layer of mystery and uneasiness, I'm sure, to Browns fans that are listening. But, you know, 2 teams are all out there on Sunday. It's not going to be the Steelers varsity. So if it's the Browns varsity, you got to get it done.
Yeah, but the one thing that I will say, and that I've continued to say, and the reason why I respect the Steelers, the standard's the standard. They're going to play hard regardless. You know, whether you're playing their JV team or whether you're playing their varsity team, they're still going to blitz. They're still going to hit you. They still draft physical football players. This is one of the, it's a difficult, weird. You just said something to me that jumps out. I don't know if any team, I don't care if it's St. Ignatius going against East Tech, wants to see a team 3 times in a year and twice in 2 weeks.
No.
It's just odd, man. It's just, you know, and in the NFL, I want to say this because every year around this time, people that have no right being on the air that talk every day say this, and it makes no sense. An NFL roster is not a college football roster. Just because Ben Roethlisberger is not going to play, and let's say I would gander without really looking at their roster that you're probably not going to see Cam Hayward that much. You're probably not going to see Joe Hayden that much. Probably not going to see Roethlisberger. You know, like you're not going to see the guys over 30. Guys that have played 9 to 10 years, 8 to 10 years, you probably aren't going to see very much of. But DeCastro maybe. But after that, you only have a 45-man roster on game day, people.
Yeah.
Like, you start doing the math. You can't sit everybody. You're still going to play some of your main guys. Am I wrong? I mean, you have no choice. You don't have enough men on a roster to do – like, Ohio State could literally play, you know, they can play 22 completely different guys than their starting guys, right, Zach?
Sure.
You can't do that with a pro roster. Like, you're still going to have to play some of your interior linemen. They're so far down on their linebacking core that they're going to have to play those guys.
Right.
Because they're already under third
Well,
string.
you usually only carry 8 offensive linemen, sometimes 9. So even if you could call up 2 guys from the practice squad, not that you want to do that, you know, they have 3 offensive linemen over 30, Jay.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense that Pouncey and DeCastro specifically wouldn't play. So not only does that make you weak, but then it makes you vulnerable. Like, do you have to dress them just in case? Like the one time where they didn't start Ben and then he came in? You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you want to play Hayward and Tuitt a couple series? You know, I don't know. I mean, Joe Hayden's going to want to play. Is it the right move for Joe Hayden and the Steelers?
No, it's not. Joe shouldn't be out there.
Yeah.
And I know it's fun. I know it's fun to slander Joe in Cleveland, but most of you, Lima included, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't make it 10 years in the NFL playing cornerback sucking. I'm just all to say. Is he as fast as he used to be? No. But he obviously mentally has figured something out to make it 10 years and make as much money as he's made. Because cornerbacks' lives last about as long as running backs, usually.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but you know they're going to trot out Mason Rudolph, who really just sucks. He's big and good looking and a strong arm, and he just sucks.
And racist.
They haven't been able to run the ball all year, so they have no reason to play their starting running back or their best offensive lineman, although we mentioned how sticky that is. Now, their receivers are all young. Juju's the oldest one of the group, and he's only – well, he's not the oldest one of the group. He's the most experienced one of the group.
Right.
You know, they're a matchup problem. And they didn't do more to the Browns secondary in the first game because they didn't have to. They got that big lead. To me, and obviously the COVID stands out with what's going on, and how as we record this, the Browns have not even been able to report for practice on Wednesday. But football-wise, Wyatt Teller's supposed to be back, and that's what they need. They need Teller, they need Wills, they need their offensive line. Wyatt Teller, his value has gone up in the last couple weeks without him playing, quite frankly. They need him. The Browns are a physical team. And in the first game, in the Browns' defense, they did not have Teller or Chubb. That's 2 of their best 5 players, and that's hard to beat anybody when you don't have those guys. So,
great point. All right, let me say this. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
No, I just want to say, so my media brethren and I, we voted this on Team MVP this week, and Miles won. I voted for Nick Chubb.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wyatt Teller get any votes?
I would have to dig into the email, and I don't have it in front of me right now. I doubt.
Don't worry about it. I mean, I don't expect him to, but it plays into what you're saying.
Yeah.
He may not be, but he's in the top 3 of importance of the team because they have a really good offensive line. I mean, this is the perfect way to segue into this off the Jets game. Learn from the Jets game. And I don't know if it's all, legit. This is just me spitballing. I can admit that. Obviously missing 4 receivers, missing your receiving core, having 24 hours to put a game plan together. Like, that's just not – it's not fair. No. It's what the Browns it's what the Browns had to put up with. We can get into the conversation. I've started it with Zach already about why they made them play, whether it's fair, whether it's with their rules, whatever. Okay, I think it's bullshit rules, and I think and I get the Baltimore situation was different. I didn't think it was fair that what they made Denver go through. I don't think it was fair what they made the Browns go through. But it doesn't matter. That's just my opinion. They missed because I've heard everybody complain, and I always say I love doing this podcast when we do it, when we don't do it the day after. Yes, throwing 53 times, we can all look at the coach and say, what the fuck? But I think that it was legitimate. It wasn't his game plan. The score played into it. And I don't care what anybody tells me that gets mad and tries to just look at numbers. The New York Jets defensive line kicked the Browns offensive line's ass. Now, they knew exactly what we all knew. And I love people that get mad about it and they get pissed at Stefanski. Look, the Jets have players that are putting tape up because they want to have careers in 2021. They're not like the head coach. They're not like everybody else. They're going to play their asses off because that's the only thing they got is their tape. And those defensive linemen went out there and played like it was a Super Bowl. Now, part of it was the Jets rolled up their people basically right up on them because they knew that the Browns couldn't throw the ball downfield. And remember I made the joke to you about the richest tight end in football that the Browns made last week. I talked about how slow he was. I mean, if I know how slow he is, and look, he's a really good tight end. He's not the best, but he's a really good tight end. He can block his ass off. He's big. He's got decent, good enough hands, but he's not fast. Look, Jason Witten's not fast, and he's still playing. And the way the Jets played, they played like you play when 10-year-olds are on the football field. You know you can't throw it over our head. Your receivers can't get open. The Browns had no chance, Zach, of running the football with the way the Jets kicked their ass on the line of scrimmage, point blank. So I understood why they threw, and this goes back to Wyatt Teller. You have some very good linemen that come together to make a good offensive line. Without their left tackle and their right guard, that offensive line is average at best. And that's not me being mean. J.C. Treader is a pro's pro, doesn't take no shit, works his ass off, but he ain't outpowering anybody. And he doesn't have – it's the center position. Batonio is really good, smart, lines up right, doesn't commit a lot of penalties, can pull, is athletic, got a lot of Joe Thomas to him. But even when Joe Thomas, who is a Hall of Famer, when the Browns had their best offense running back in 2007, their strong side, power side of running, was to the right side when Ryan Tucker played right guard. And I don't want to put words on it because my point is Joe Thomas was a technician, not a power, drive a guy into the dirt type tackle. They are a different offense, and they don't have their key signature thing without Wyatt Teller and Jed Wills at this point. They're not the two best offensive linemen maybe, but they're the two most important. Now, the right tackle is pretty aggressive as well. But the Jets kicked their ass. You couldn't run the football. And when you got down by the score you got down by, I'm not mad at Kevin Stefanski for that. And he makes a good point. When they were going into the half, the first time they got that offense rolling, and I don't know how they did this, by the way. How do you run a 2-minute offense, Zach, with receivers that never played with the quarterback?
No, you threw to the tight end.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Right. But, I mean, it worked. But, Zach, it worked.
No,
I remember
it did.
thinking, how the hell are they going to run a 2-minute offense? These guys don't know the sign, don't know what to do. I mean, they had guys that hadn't played NFL football got 78, 80 snaps on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a miracle.
No, just in general, the way that line plays together, right? I think Teller's talents, his athleticism unlocks some different runs for one, but for two, early in the year, why'd you have no chance week one? Because they'd never done it. Because you had a 21-year-old rookie playing a position he'd never played before, right? Against the Ravens. These guys had never had live snaps before. Conklin was new, right?
Right.
The offense was new. Conklin's been great. He big part, worth every penny. Now listen, Austin Hooper blocks his ass off. Time will tell, on that investment. And I know it's easy to say this week that he doesn't explode and what are they doing? But sometimes, and this is part of team building, this is part of getting your team to the next level. You have to understand what the alternative was, guys. David Njoku, we've seen him play football, right?
Can't trust him.
Then they're playing this fourth-round rookie who for the first 4 games was the next John Mackey. And now he can't catch a cold, right?
He's hit a wall.
Yeah, hit a wall.
Hey,
so
Travis Kelce wasn't out there in free agency this year, people, is what Zach's saying.
Yeah, and Travis Kelce's not walking through that door,
No.
The reason you reach on a Njoku is because you see how a Kelce unlocks an offense, but then you take that guy one pick before TJ Watt goes, and that's why you are where you are, right?
Yeah, well, here's something else, and I got to give Lombardi credit. Lombardi's got a good story. in The Athletic this week, talking about the quarterback down in Washington for the Washington football team, and just how everything went wrong in Haskins. And I mean, I don't want to be an ass about this, but if you knew what you knew about Dwayne Haskins coming in, and this isn't to belittle the kid at all, because he is a kid, and he had a bad week. But Lombardi does a good job of saying, for all franchises, this is more Washington football team's fault than Dwayne Haskins. Because anyone that knew Haskins coming out of Ohio State knew he held the ball too long, knew he wasn't a film junkie, knew he was. Urban came out and said he was immature. To anybody that will listen. So if you go into all those situations and you draft a quarterback or draft a tight end before T.J. Watt, it's your fault if you don't develop him, because you know, if you did your research and did your work, you have to know what you're walking into, right?
Yeah.
Like, Haskins failing is not Haskins' fault. Haskins was Haskins. And if you've listened to this podcast for long enough, there is a rule that equates to this that Zach always says so well.
If a guy's a shithead, giving him $17 million isn't going to make him any less of a shithead. Right?
Boom.
No,
yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dre, because it's a larger thing, because we've had the discussion here, like, of even if this guy doesn't work, was it a bad pick? Well, if he's just not going to be a pro, then yes, it's a bad pick. We went through that here with John Manziel, right?
Right.
And it does come to a personal responsibility issue for him. I don't know that he's going to be in the league next year, Dwayne Haskins. I'm not saying he isn't. The talent is tantalizing, and there's not many guys like that. But we've seen what happens with quarterback rooms and how they're protected and how they have to set a tone and they have to do things a certain way. Right. And if you don't think he's going to do it, if you think he could poison your team 1%, why are you going to take that chance?
At that position, you really can't do it.
No.
And it goes back to the Kaepernick thing a little bit. I'm doing this in a way because I want to explain to people. Kaepernick is a good player, but because of everything else that comes along with it, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. This is just it's the reality of it, and I want to do it the right way. The reality of it is, no matter what he says or has done 4 years ago, 4 weeks from now, or 2 weeks from now, the average NFL team, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, at the backup quarterback position or the quarterback position, unless he is going to go out and win 12, 13 games a year for you, you're not going to take on extra baggage at that position, because that position, and Lombardi says this perfectly, and we live this, A to Z lives this. The average football fan only gives a crap about two things: your head coach and your quarterback.
Yep.
You can have Jeffrey Dahmer playing corner or safety.
Yeah.
But they care about your quarterback and they care about your head coach, and they dictate how they feel about your organization because of those two positions. Fair? That's what you to decide.
No,
but
well,
that is
right. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. Like the head coach, quarterback, too much credit, too much blame thing, right? Like, the Browns won 4 games in a row, right, Dre? And we talked about how Kevin Stefanski, we're ready to build a statue ourselves, and how him pressing the right buttons and Baker getting comfortable helped Baker get to the next level. Well, the Browns had like 80 off-the-field things go their way the other day, but the head coach and the quarterback both didn't have a very good day, right? Like, they are so married to one another. They are so married to one another. And it's so important. It's the most important position in sports, and that's why it's an interesting as hell study with Haskins. What do you do? What would you have done differently? Like I said, until this stuff came out, and it just became, like I said, a personal responsibility and a team saying we're going to cut ties and move on. My unofficial count, Dre,
go ahead.
In the last 10 years, 4 quarterbacks have been drafted in the first round and have not even made it to year 3 with their team. Okay, wow. I could be missing one, but this is pretty rare, and it's pretty shitty. It means you failed as an organization, right? Mm-hmm. Josh Rosen, who got traded for Kyler, who was on a practice squad until a week ago. Dwayne Haskins.
That situation's odd.
Yeah. Dwayne Haskins, and then the other 2 are here in Cleveland, Brandon Weeden and John Manziel.
Wow. And they all come back to the organization. Arizona, I'll give a free pass on, because they changed the head coach, changed direction. But I'll say this too, and you know this, personally, you know this. So when I say this, I have to be careful. I am a huge Jason Wright fan. As a person,
Yes.
we covered him. We knew him. We're just, like, he was as good as a person I've ever covered in a locker room. And I am hoping I don't cheer for the Washington football team, but I cheer for Jason Wright. And I hope he gets that situation turned around. And he seems like the right person because he has the right character to do it. And his heart is in the right place. He's a good man. Dwayne Haskins should have started that football game, though, last week for the Redskins. And to me, the dirtiness of what the NFL truly is showed up for Washington last week. The kid didn't do anything different, Zach, from this past Sunday to Monday when he cut his ass. They wanted to cut him for what he did last Sunday and everything else he did. But because Alex Smith was injured and because they were really trying to win that game to sneak into the playoffs, knowing they got no damn right, nobody in that division deserves to win anything or play another game after this Sunday. But the itch to win, the pull to win, the pull to possibly be in the playoffs, they kept that kid for one more week, knowing they wanted nothing to do with him, knowing they wanted him to represent nothing for their football team, knowing he represented everything bad about who the Washington organization has been since Daniel Snyder took over. They still fell for the beast and kept his ass and let him represent them and let him take the ball in his hands and embarrass them for another 2 quarters. And I'm not blaming Jason Wright for that. I blame the system. It's like a drug. If you can get that win with that kid, even though they knew they couldn't stand him, they were going to use his ass up and try to get that win out of it last Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, that's on the, Jason's non-football. He was brought in to change the culture. But, I mean, that's a head coaching decision, but, Dre, that's what it is. I mean, why does Kareem Hunt instantly get a second chance? Because it's about winning. And when it works, it works. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said, including the fact that Jason is such a good person that you and I spent 2 seconds around him and we're like, God, we're more awful than we even thought, right?
Yeah.
But
I'll never forget. All right, I got a great Jason Wright story I think I've never told that'll show that real well. I'll never forget. We go in the locker room. Like it was after like week 2 or 3 of the season, and he was out of Northwestern, and somehow he knew, and he was like, and players weren't like this. And Zach will back this up. And he goes, because he hung out with doctors, he didn't hang out with other football players. I remember he still drove like a sport Taurus. Like he didn't even buy, like he got into the league and didn't even buy like a souped up car. He was still driving like a sport Taurus that he had growing up or whatever. So we're in the locker room and he like calls me over and I'm like, why is Jason Wright calling me over? He was like, yeah, I was hanging out with some of my buddies that are doctors. And one of the girls says she dated you in high school. And like he said her name and he was just like, so she asked me about you. And he goes, oh, I said he's a quiet, nice guy. And she looked at me and she goes, well, you obviously don't know Andre if you think he's a quiet, nice guy. That was Jason Wright.
Oh, God. That is great. All right. Alabama's going to do awful things to Notre Dame, right?
I think so, yeah.
To the Buck, I mean, look, playing Northwestern's different. They had the big stink because Joey Galloway said they're slow and white, and he was right. But like they have an identity, a long-established program to where they are overachievers. They are defensive-minded, and an Ohio State team that was a little bit rusty and a little bit big for its britches, I think just got greedy a little bit, right? And Northwestern played right into that. I think Ohio State will be better. I guess what I'm asking you is Ohio State's good enough to keep up with Clemson, because if Clemson hits that gas, they can go.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up Notre Dame in this, because Notre Dame gives me hope that the Buckeyes can win. Because I'll be honest, going into this conversation, and even before you just asked, my first thought was, I don't think it's going to be close. And I don't like thinking that way, because I know Ohio State has the talent. It has not been molded. It has not been put together. I'm hoping Dabo Swinney has put his foot far enough in his mouth. He's a good coach. He's put that program together. I don't want to get into what he's doing is bullshit, but it is who he is. But you know what? It's America. You're allowed to have an opinion. And that's one thing we've learned in 2020. No matter if the opinion's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's racist, whether it's disgusting, you have a right to have an opinion. And Dabo has it. I'm hoping, and I hate to go off of emotion, but we're talking about college kids. I hope that Ryan Day finds a way to use the emotional tug of they don't respect us, they don't think we should be here, all those silly little quotations that we use and we see in movies with sports. I hope that he can pull that up, because that's not going to win a game for you. But what it can do is give you a lead, give you momentum early. And they have.
Sorry, we got a goddamn dog now.
It's all right. Look at domesticated Zach. I love this shit. 2020 has been a fucking blur. He went from his mama's basement to domesticated, taking care of a dog. Woof, woof. On that ass. I just hope that they can get a quick. I mean, I forgot. I went back and watched a little bit of last year's game. The Buckeyes were up 2 scores early. And, so it's possible. If they can get up early, they can find a rhythm. And I go back to that Notre Dame game. I know Pretty Boy Floyd didn't play quarterback in the first game for Clemson. But defensively, they found something that they were able to score points against Clemson. Right. To me, that's the big thing. We know we know that they steal your plays or whatever else. But you got to look at what Notre Dame was able to do offensively to go up and down the field. They used the sugar huddle. They didn't put their plays in like they usually do because they know that it's basically out there. Clemson steals your plays. And I don't think I'm not saying that's fair. I don't know. It is what it is. To me, it's like baseball. You flash signs in front of everybody, you better expect somebody on the other team is trying to figure them out. That's just natural. That always is natural.
Yeah, so a couple things that give me hope on Ohio State is, they dominated that game last year. And whether you think it all came down to that targeting call or not as the shifting point, they should have been up more, right? They dropped the ball in the end zone. Something else happened early. They were ready, right? They were scheme ready. They were plan ready, and they were talented. They absolutely belong on the field, no doubt. But what concerns me, Dre, is that, Clemson had the poise and the talent to come back.
Yeah.
I think that Ohio State defense was better than this one. And just in watching almost every down of the most recent Clemson-Notre Dame game, they just, in the second quarter, they were done trading punches and they just ran them over. And I think that's a pretty good Notre Dame defense. I really do.
It is a good Notre Dame defense. And here's the problem. The biggest problem I think the Ohio State has is not Trevor Lawrence when they're on defense. I think it's number 9. I mean, he's been playing there 18 years. I don't know why. He used to be making NFL.
Well, yeah, he just opens up dimensions, right?
Yeah. In the linebacking core for the Buckeyes, they have not shown me that they could. I'm not worried about him running. I'm worried about him catching passes. Haven't seen a linebacker for Ohio State this year that I can say you put on ATN that can slow him down. That concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a concern. I mean, they lost that receiver to the scary, neck situation, right? Well, they got 6 more games, just like Ohio State does. Just like Ohio. Frankly, if Ohio State had played 5 more games, they'd be where Clemson is.
Absolutely. And maybe, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's funny you go back to last year, and we got to go back to last year's game. That's what we had. They don't get the call on the forced fumble scoop.
Right.
But also, let's go down to it. The biggest play of the game, if the quarterback and one of the best receivers in the nation are on the same read, we may be talking about Ohio State Clemson coming back for vengeance.
Oh.
Because, it literally came down to that, Zach. 3 more steps for Olave going to the right and not going to the left. He catches that ball, and we may be talking about Ohio State 27-26 victory.
Right. They had their chances. No doubt. No doubt that they had their chances. I just want to say, guys, as we get ready to wind up here, whether you're a new listener or a long-time listener, whether you interact with us a little bit or a lot, we appreciate you. If you're a sponsor and you'd like to pay for my dog to pick football games each week, we think it's a brilliant idea. It'll be a big hit, and just give us a call. It'll really go over well, I think.
only if Mr. October does his famous Christmas dog call. You little bitch.
Let's get you out of here on some New Year's cheers. So when Dre references Mr. October, he's talking about my father. And so in part because of the dog, in part because there was some other stuff getting worked on, I went to my parents today, got back to my roots, and I had to do the Athletic podcast from my parents' basement. I was working on a story. I was waiting on a Zoom call. Couldn't be here for a certain amount of time, so I went and posted up over there. So while I was there, Dre, it was quiet. Only my dad was there for a lot of the time. It's not a super big house. He could hear every word of the podcast if he wanted to, and I could hear every word of his conversation. Well, it became pretty apparent to me that it was my brother on the other end of the line, and that he was asking about a car question, right? And so my dad can fix anything. We can fix nothing. The tire changing story is one of the famous A to Z stories, and just one of the famous stories in our life. Like, sometimes I get introduced not as mediocre writer for The Athletic or mediocre podcaster, but the guy from the tire changing story. So I hear him grunting and I hear him explaining that if you do this and it doesn't work, you do this, and if it doesn't do that, you're just toast, right? So I didn't know, what the exact details were, obviously. So anyway, about 2 hours later, I pack up, I come back here, getting set up, waiting for you, and I get a text from my brother. And it was one of his players' cars. And so he texts me and my mom, and he says, when trying to take care of fix of so-and-so's car, I used the following regisms. Number 1, that ain't no fucking good. Number 2, take it there and they will fix you up. Number 3, here's the thing. You're fucked and you have no other options. Pay it and move on.
This is great.
So as we look back at 2020, if you were fucked, you had no other options. Pay it and move on. As we look ahead to 2021, if you're a Browns fan, you've been waiting for a Sunday like this, win or lose, enjoy it. If you're a Buckeyes fan, I guess it's a lot easier this year to not overdo New Year's Eve, right? And enjoy a football game at 8:30 on New Year's Day. And honestly, positive vibes to everybody, whether you're going through some real shit or you just been slightly inconvenienced by this. We both know people on both sides of the spectrum. Our jobs have been different and continue to be different. Our lives continue to be different. I know people that just recently have lost loved ones from this and related to this. Again, we're not making light of any of that. We try to be good people, not just when we think about Jason Wright frowning upon us, but in general. Doing this, and Dre, a podcast or two, brought this up out of nowhere, and it reminded me, I'm just going to be frank with you guys. Like, since the pandemic, we haven't made a dime on this. We do it because we want to do it, and we do it because it's fun. And we know, like, when you guys send us a note that say you listen to it, or it reminds you of this, or it takes you to that, like, that means a lot to us. So yes, we plan on taking it bigger and better and all that stuff. And yes, we keep telling you we're going to do it more often, and we don't, and we're full of shit, and that's fine. That's what you sign up for. But you guys getting on board with us in this year, in a normal year, in a great year, in a bad year, in whatever it was, and whether it goes back two episodes ago or 5 years ago, we appreciate it. And that's all I got. Go subscribe to The Athletic. Read my Kelly Holcomb story. What do you got, Trey?
Go read the Kelly Holcomb story. He had it first. Just came out last. I appreciate you guys. I do. And like Zach said, I think the one thing that we have wrestled with, and I'll be honest, I've wrestled with all year, because if you guys know me a little bit, obviously I got to be careful, because I was almost writing a speech of walking away from something, but I'm not. Obviously, because I worked at TAM for as many years as I've worked at TAM, and it's been a long time, and I will always be appreciative of what TAM has done for my career, because a lot of it you may not see, but a lot of it is just I got the reps there, and I got to see a lot of different things and talk about a lot of different things. When I got to that place, I was just a sports guy. That's all I had to talk about. That's all I really ever wanted to talk about. And it's been a joy. But now that I've kind of grown up career-wise, radio-wise there, this podcast has been a great outlet for me, because in a weird way, I've had a lot of success doing TV and doing different things, and financially it's helped out. My family's in a good place. But I enjoy the conversations and the back and forth. And Zach has helped fill a place for me where I can just go out and bullshit like we do once a week, and lie and say we're going to do another one. And we have all these grandiose plans
Just like you lie to me when you're ready at 2:15 and at 3:20 you're like, yo, what's up?
Let's go, motherfucker. I'm ready. What's taking you so long? It's been an important place for me in all seriousness. And it's not jealousy because I'm happy for all the people out there that get to do radio every day. I've had that opportunity. It's something I dreamed of doing. And I got to admit, doing this podcast has kind of filled that bubble for me. And in this year, I've realized that whatever normal is, and I get back to just doing our normal job, I do want to podcast more, and I do want to find a way to get paid for it more. I do have more things to say and different ways to say them. And it's been hard at times to do this podcast throughout this year because you may have strong feelings about, this virus that's going on or racism or this or that. And it made me realize that without this space, I probably would have lost my mind going crazy. And it's not that we've talked about all those things all the time, but it's been nice to have, as Casey Coleman always told me, sports are, they're the thing that take us away from the regular parts of life. That's why people turn to it. So I hope we were able to do that for you. I hope we were that time out from whatever was going on in your life, because I know it meant that much to me this year, being able to turn away for a couple minutes and not deal with the everyday shit that everybody else is dealing with. And I appreciate that. I mean, we did a podcast, I want to say the day of or the night of, when we thought the presidency was going to be figured out. And we got more messages. I got more people that messaged us and was just thought we did it on purpose. You guys must know it. You must not really know us. We just do them when we fucking can figure out how to do them. We don't time shit out. If we did, this podcast would be so much better. And I had so many people reach out. And was like, thank you for taking our mind off of this. Thank you. And I remember thinking, damn, man, I'm glad we did. It took our mind off of it, too. We weren't even trying to do that. Yeah. Our plan never was, hey, let's do a podcast so people don't have to, talk about Democrat, Republican for the next hour. I wish we would have been smart enough to think that, but we weren't.
Yeah,
so
man.
It means something to us.
Yeah. So again, celebrate responsibly, celebrate well. Hopefully, it won't be long, and we'll all be out in public again. And we look forward to that. Whether there's a formal A to Z event tied to that or not, whether we get to do more of these or whether we don't.
It's going to be an event. We losing our mind when we're allowed to go back out.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I agree.
So,
we're losing our mind when we get out.
2 bits of advice from Uncle Z to you guys as we get out of here and we wrap 2020. 1, find a good mechanic. And 2, don't get a goddamn dog. They're a lot of work. Talk to you soon.
Good